Thank you for that introduction to today's topic and setting out its terms. So like Ananya, I am also not a grammar person. I am not grammarly inclined, let's say. My last dealing with grammar was in school when, I tried to avoid it as much as possible. And my deepest memory of grammar is picking up a copy of Wren and Martin from my cousin's bookshelf, flipping through it, feeling my eyes glaze over and putting it back in the bookshelf and never looking at it again. So my next introduction to grammar has actually come through writing pedagogy and through looking at academic writing. And I think that I have a slightly different take on it now, which is that most of our academic journeys engage with looking at the content of what somebody is saying, looking at the content of their writing. But now my question is, can looking at the structure, can looking at the form, can looking at how they're saying what they're saying also give me some clue to understand what people are saying, to understand their ideas, to understand their arguments, and to also shape and form my own. So this is my my experience with grammar part 2. I am not an expert by any means, but let's see what we can still, even with our fear of grammar, can we still get something out of it? So I'm also just quickly going to share my screen. And yeah, second. Yeah, visible? Yes.
It's visible, Vasudha.
Yeah, okay, great. Okay, so I'm just going to put it on slideshow where it doesn't seem to want to go there. Okay, let me just do this, and if I can figure it out, I'll get started. And if I can figure it out, I will get to that. Okay, so we've been looking at sentence structure. We've been looking at the structure of simple sentences and complex sentences. And we've been looking at how understanding these structures and understanding simple and complex sentences can allow us to make more sense of the texts that we've come across. What we're going to do now in this section is try and understand how we can use some of these structures in the service of our own arguments, in the service of making our arguments more complex, more nuanced, qualifying them. And it's in this sense that we look at complexity of thought. So thoughts and ideas and arguments which are not simply put, which are not simple links between one thing and another, but include all sorts of shades and nuances, which we find in our work, which we find in the world, which we find in the texts that we read, which we find through our research, which bring complications and complexities to our initial ideas. We're going to try and understand how sentence structures using certain patterns and certain words and phrases can help us to not just learn how to read this complexity, but also learn how to write it, right? Yeah, so just to recap what Ananya was talking about in the last section, a complex sentence has one dependent and one independent clause. And this is what we were talking about. So one bare clause and then a dependent clause. Now, a complex sentence, the structure of the complex sentence can allow us to hold together complex thought. And what do we mean by that complex thought? Thought that is not one simple claim, but is layered with evidence that prevents us from making unqualified statements. So thought which introduces evidence, which qualifies the statements that we're making, which introduces nuance into the claims that we're making. This is what we mean by, sorry, something has popped up on the screen. Yeah, this is what we mean by complex thought. And we're going to look now at how complex sentences can allow us to engage with this kind of thought. Can I have the next slide? I'm going to be looking at a few sentences from Professor Surinder Jodhkar's The Indian Middle Class. We're going to be looking at a statement that he's made. Now, let's put ourselves in his position as somebody who is looking at the situation from a rural and urban India. You start with a proposition, right? Proposition 1, the assumption that you have before you enter into your research. Proposition 1, the story of India's population change is simple. People move from villages to cities for jobs, rural populations decline. This seems obvious. If people are moving from villages to cities, then rural populations will go down and the populations of urban areas will rise. But our research shows us something different. Our research shows us that rural populations moved to cities, but research also shows that rural populations did not go down, right? Now, how do we make sense of this? This seems like an obvious contradiction. If our populations if people are moving, then the place from where they're moving the population should be going down. So how will we make sense of this? So let's just read Professor Jodhkar's sentence. However, the demographic story of India is not all that simple. While the proportion of rural population has indeed been declining over the years, though rather slowly, and many of its villagers have over the years and over generations moved to cities, the absolute number of those living in rural settlements has also not declined. On the contrary, rural populations in absolute terms have also been growing quite consistently from 212.5 million in 1901 to 480 million in 1971 and to 742 million in 2001. So these are the statements that he is making. Now let's take a closer look at some of the parts and elements of this sentence to enable us to understand how he has conveyed the complexity of the situation he's describing in the words that he's used. Can we go to the next slide?
Yeah. Gosh, why is this freezing every time I try to change it? No, my screen is frozen.
Okay.
Okay. Has it changed? Yeah. Okay. It's changed now. Has it changed for you?
Yeah.
Okay. Was it? There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's take bit of the sentence at a time. However, the demographic story of India is not all that simple. What is the word however doing in this sentence? What does it indicate about what came before this sentence and what will come after, right? So this is a sentence taken from a book that Professor Jodhkar has written, from an essay that Professor Jodhkar has written. And so something has come before this and something is going to come after it. So what is the word however indicating about what has come before? It's pointing to some kind of contradiction that he is bringing our attention to in the material that he is describing. So, however, the demographic story of India is not all that simple, indicates that there is a demographic story which he has set out for us. But now he is bringing our attention to certain complications and complexities in that story. So that word is really important, and it's coming really right at the beginning of the sentence that he's writing for us, right? Now, and that's doing a really important job of pointing our attention right from the start to some kind of complication, some kind of complexity that he will explicate more as he goes on. Now, what do we learn? Where do we come to from reading the rest of the sentence? And you can see in blue here, certain parts of it have been marked out. We'll come to those later, but let's focus right now on what's in blue. While the proportion of rural population has indeed been declining over the years, the absolute number of those living in rural settlements has also not declined. So what is this telling us? This is taking the form of a complex sentence, right? And it is telling us something about the proportion of rural population. It's telling us that while the proportion of rural population has indeed been declining, that while the proportion of rural population has been declining, the absolute number of those living in rural settlements has also not declined. So what is the word while giving us a sense of? It's giving us a sense that two ideas are being held simultaneously. At the same time, if you can just rephrase this, at the same time as the proportion of rural population has been declining, the absolute number of those living in rural settlements has also not declined. So you have two almost contradictory statements here, that the rural population is being declining, but the proportion of the rural population is declining, but the absolute numbers of those living in rural areas has not declined. And what is the phrase? What are the words and phrases which are allowing Professor Jyotka to maintain this contradiction in his writing? It is the word while, because that is what turns our attention to the fact that these two seemingly contradictory situations are taking place at the same time, right? And it is the structure of the sentence that is doing this work for him, right? So, we had looked in the first session when Ananya was talking about qualifying our bare clauses. We were saying the word while will immediately make us ask, while this is happening, what now? What else, right? And this is and that is the question that Professor Jyotka is answering in the next part of the sentence. So it's through this that he's introducing that complexity. Can we have the next slide, please? Right, so we've looked at two parts of what Professor Jyotka has done in just this small extract. Now we're looking at another line, right? The line marked in blue. Though rather slowly, and many of its villagers have over the years and over generations moved to cities. So what is though rather slowly about? What is this telling us? It's coming in this same complex sentence that we had looked at. While the proportion of rural population has indeed been declining over the years, though rather slowly. What does this tell us? It is a further qualification of the idea of the decline of the rural proportion of the rural population. That not only has the absolute number increased, the absolute number of the rural population increased, but the decline in the proportion itself is quite slow. So we can see here, he's taking this idea of the decline in the proportion of the rural population, and he's qualifying it in not just one way, but two. One, he's qualifying it by saying, all right, even if there's a decline, it's quite slow. And the second way is by saying that even if there is a decline in proportion, in absolute numbers, there's actually been an increase, or there has not been a decrease. So what do we see here? We see here that the complexity of these thoughts, the complexity of the situation of the rural population is being conveyed without having to remove any of that complexity. What he's referring to is a complex situation. It's a situation full of contradictions. And the way in which he's writing it allows him to convey it to us without having to erase any of those contradictions, but instead be able to communicate those contradictions. So how does that happen, right? We came across in Ananya's presentation just now the phrase non-essential appositive, right? This precise point which we see in this part which is marked in blue in the first sentence, though rather slowly, and many of its villagers have over the years and over generations moved to cities, is a non-essential appositive, right? It's further qualifying the noun the thing we are talking about, the subject of the sentence, the proportion of rural population in this case. And it's further qualifying it, but in a way that if you remove it, which we did in the previous slide, the sentence is still making sense. Now, it may still make sense without it grammatically, but here, in terms of the information which it's providing us, it's doing really important work. And it's also doing important work in a way which is really easy to understand. We still know what is happening rather slowly, right? We've just come across this phrase, though rather slowly, but we know immediately what this is actually referring to, right? Now, the next thing that we can take a look at here from the phrase, which from this extract which we're looking at, the introductory phrase, on the contrary, allows Jyotka to introduce the data as evidence that shows the increase in rural population and not its decline. So we were talking about complexity through contradiction. And here we have this phrase, the way we had, however, right at the start of this extract, we have the phrase on the contrary, which is again doing that really important work of showing us that contradiction right at the outset, right? So we know that this data that he's using, we know how he is interpreting it and how he wants us to interpret it. It's contradicting something which is coming before. How do we know that? It's saying on the contrary, right at the start, right? So it's drawing our attention to this, it's presenting that data, but it's also telling us how to look at that data. So we can see here, through the use of these introductory tags, through the use of these words and phrases that do this work of pointing our attention to how the argument is proceeding, that do the work of pointing our attention to how to interpret what is coming after, and in the case of, however, what has in fact come before, where these words and phrases are allowing us to make sense of the information which Professor Jyotka is giving us, which allows us to hang on to all the seemingly contradictory information which this little extract is presenting, and it allows him to represent that complexity of the empirical situation that he is finding when he is looking at the study of rural populations. Now let's see what we can, So what we are doing when what he is doing is something that actually we can learn how to do too, just by learning how to read him for these specific features of his writing and learning how to write using some of those tools that he has displayed for us. So words like however or on the contrary allow authors to introduce contradiction of logic or evidence when it is used as an introductory tag. So introductory tag, something that's coming right at the start. Complex sentences make it possible for authors to hold contradictory ideas that go together towards forming complex thought that doesn't rely on easy correlation. So it's not so simple to say as one population declines, the other is increasing. No, here one population is declining, but in absolute numbers it's increasing. How do we make sense of this complexity? The sentence has conveyed this complexity to us. And complex sentences are useful when we unpack evidence, when we are writing it or when we're reading it. That's something which we've been talking about previously. Okay, can we move to the next slide?
Okay. Vasudha, if I could just interrupt you for a second. Looking at the time, I'd suggest you go over one example, and I've emailed, I've sort of put the PPT in the link so people have the PPT for the other exercises. Yeah. Just show one example and move on to the car example so that we have time to cover all the points. And the exercises people can do on their own, they have the PPT now.
Yeah, great. So let's just take a look at this particular example that's on our screen right now. Proposition 1, the population in Indian cities is growing. People in cities are having more children. It seems like obvious logic. If populations are growing, it must mean that people are having more children. But our research will show us something different. City populations have a small proportion of internal growth. Growth is also because of village to city population movement. Growth is also because what were rural places are becoming urban places. Now we can see similar sentence structures that Jyotika is using in the previous phrase that we looked at can be applied to make sense of this information. So if you see the phrase that you see here, however, the story of the Indian city's growth is not that simple, is something that we have written here while preparing the slide. That those aren't his words, but it could be written here and used to draw our attention to the complexity in the way of the previous sentence, right? The previous phrase. However, the story of the Indian city's growth is not that simple. While some of it is indeed a consequence of internal growth of urban populations, a large proportion of the increase is a result of the processes of urbanization, migration from rural to urban areas, and the transformation of rural settlements into urban sectors. So what is this telling us? Again, the use of however indicates a contradiction with something that has come before, and the use of the word while indicates how certain contradictory processes are happening at the same point of time. So again, what we've been talking about, how do we express complex thought? How do we express complex arguments? How do we express the complexity of the situation that we find, that we find when we do our research? We find people making all sorts of situations, making all sorts of references to information which can be contradictory, where there are shades and nuances, where while something is taking place, it's not having the impact that we thought it would, or other situations are impacting it. This is what we find when we read. This is what we find when we read, whether it's our course material. This is what we find when we enter field situations and experimental situations. And these are some of the ways that we have to actually make sense of this complexity and to actually convey it to our readers. Okay, so because we've been having some tech issues and all of that, we're going to
so there are these exercises again of contradictory information, how that might be utilized, how we might use a however tag and use a complex sentence structure with while to actually write one sentence that holds all of that together, and we are calling it complex sentence, right? So these examples are there on the PPT. I put it in the chat box, so you all have it now. We don't have the time to go over all of this. Vasudha, if you could just take us through this portion quickly, then we can move on to the rest of it.
Sorry, if I could interrupt. Ananya, people are asking if you could share your presentation as well in the chat.
Once I've finished. Right now I can't. If you have it, Samir, right? I emailed it to you in the morning.
I'll do that.
You can put it in the chat box. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. All right, Vasudha, sorry. Yeah.
Not at all. So the difference between so what we're trying to do is engage with the complexity of our evidence in our writing, right? And what complexity came through the statistical data that Professor Jyotika was referring to in the previous example we were working with. In this example, we're talking about complexity that just comes through our sources, through the secondary research that we might do, or the texts that we might be reading, right? And we're going to look here at somebody who is tying together sources which seem to be saying where contradictory sorts of statements are being made. We're looking at Nicholas Carr's article from The Atlantic, Is Google Making Us Stupid? The perfect recall of silicon memory, Wired's Clive Thompson has written, can be an enormous boon to thinking. But that boon comes at a price. As the media theorist Marshall McLuhan pointed out in the 1960s, media are not just passive channels of information. They supply the stuff of thought, but they also shape the process of thought. So this is the extract. If we perform a similar exercise to what we have done by looking at the elements of the extract, we'll get somewhere something like this. Can you take us to the next slide? Yeah. So look at these two phrases in blue. These are the sources that Carr is drawing together. Clive Thompson saying that the perfect recall of silicon memory can be an enormous boon to thinking, and Marshall McLuhan saying that media are not just passive channels of information. And how is he allowing us, and what way is he presenting complexity? But So Clive Thompson is saying that the perfect recall of silicon memory is an enormous boon to thinking. According to Nicholas Carr, and these points in these words marked in orange are Carr's words, but that boon comes at a price. So what's the word but allowing him to do? It is to bring in that contradiction. So he's going to contradict something that Clive Thompson is saying. And then he's saying media are not just passive channels of information. So now what is the phrase not just allowing us to do, allowing Carr to do rather? It's allowing him to qualify that contradiction. It's allowing him to say that media are channels of information, but they are more than that. They are not just channels of information. They are giving us something more. Now, he's not contradicting entirely what Clive Thompson is saying. He's not saying Clive Thompson is entirely wrong, but he is pointing to some ways in which Clive Thompson may be incomplete, right? And that is another way of adding nuance and adding that qualification to the work that we're doing. It's also a way of reading it, right? It's also a way of learning to read certain parts of the text that we come across, and then use some of those tools that we see the author has used to clarify our own writing, to introduce this complexity into our own writing. So can we go to the next slide? Yeah, again, similar to the Jyotika example that we took, there are some examples here and exercises here that we could use to put these two, put this particular type of sentence together that we could look at, that you guys could look at once the slide is made available. In the interest of time, I won't go through it now.
Okay, so there are a couple more examples here. So I'll just pause on the sum up screen, and then I'm going to stop sharing. So just everyone take a note of this, and I'm going to now stop sharing and start sharing my screen. Is that all right, Vasudha?
Yeah, perfect.